What if every time you said yes to a craving, you were actually saying no to your calling? What if the midnight snack was the reason why your morning fire never came? And what if the reason why you feel spiritually stuck isn't because God is ignoring you, but because you are numbing yourself into silence one bite at a time? In my last video, Gluttony is the poverty spirit in disguise, we exposed the uncomfortable truth that poverty doesn't start in your bank account, it starts in your appetite. And if you want to be notified for the next about how your belly is blocking your breakthrough, make sure you subscribe because I don't see anybody else talking about this. Because today we are going deeper. And not that you are struggling with food, but that you are in agreement with bondage and that you've been calling it a bad habit. When the truth is, it's not about dieting, but it's about destiny. And until you break the craving, you will keep delaying your calling. And so today, I'm not here to give you tips. I'm here to help you break the contract you have made with comfort. So let's dive in. Today, we're going to be talking about exposure, which is not that you're struggling with food, but that you are in agreement with a bondage. And we're going to go over the doctrine and what the Bible literally says and how you can't get your way out of this because these are literally the rules that God made the world with. And so, the first thing that you have to understand is that you are in a war, and it's a war that you probably don't expect, and that is your imagination versus your appetite. Now, poverty and gluttony are both problems of imagination. And this is a connection that I don't see anybody else making, but that is so huge because both of them stem from the inability to project forward, which is a facet of imagination, to think about how that purchase or how that bite will cascade over time. You see, wealthy people think in terms of compounding, whereas gluttons think in terms of cravings. And so, to define it plainly, poverty is what happens when you consume without calculating the consequence. And gluttony is what happens when you indulge without envisioning the cost. They are different symptoms of the same disease. You see, the root of both gluttony and poverty is a life lived in reaction and not revelation. And people don't overeat because they're bad. They overeat because they can't picture a version of themselves who is truly free. When is the last time you've been able to see yourself that way, that you were truly free from bondage to food and to craving? Because people don't overspend simply because they're reckless. They overspend because they can't imagine the long term vision of themselves stewarding well, living strong, building wealth, and sustaining vision. So they default to what feels good right now. This is just a small little thing. It's just one bite. It doesn't matter. I just need something to get me through. One bite won't change anything. But every bite, every swipe of the credit card, every scroll on social media, every splurge is a vote for a future that you don't want, but that you're actively choosing. Because appetite lives in the moment, but imagination builds in decades. And this is why poverty can't be solved by money. And if you think it can, just take a look at the list of lottery winners who had tons of money and then blew it, or how over 80% of people who get tons of these $1 million contracts in the NFL go broke within 5 years of coming back. And this is the same reason why gluttony can't be solved by a meal plan. Go look at the data that says between 80 and 95% of people who lose weight gain it back within 3 years because both are identity level issues with vision. People who can delay gratification have one thing in common. They can see the future. They can feel the impact compounding. They have a clear imagination of where they're going and who they must become in order to get there. But gluttony short circuits all of that. It says, why plan for overflow when I'm overwhelmed right now? Why fast for fire when I'm fatigued right now? Why steward my appetite when food is the only thing I have that I didn't have to earn? Gluttony isn't about lack of discipline as much as it's about lack of a compelling future. You don't binge when you deeply are connected to your vision. You binge when you have lost touch with it. You don't sabotage your body when you know it is the vehicle for a divine assignment. You do it when you no longer believe that your body's going to go anywhere meaningful. Like if you have a vehicle and you know that you're going to pull up to this place that is very important to your dream job, and maybe your dream is to be an entrepreneur. Let's say there's a person who could literally snap their fingers and give you your dream business on a platter and everything. And you knew that the first impression that you made in them was going to be so important. And you were going to prepare your vehicle to pull up to their house where you knew that they would be greeting you. how would that change the way that you present yourself, the way that you present your car? Because you know where you're going. And so you are in preparation. But when you don't truly believe that you're ever going to get there, why would you prepare? And this is why gluttony and poverty walk hand in hand, which we discussed in the first video. And it's because neither is just about behavior, it's about collapsed imagination. Because appetite without imagination only leads to stagnation. Because you were given an appetite for a reason, and it has nothing to do with physical hunger. You were given an appetite, but you are satiating it instead of utilizing the imagination and the creativity to allow hunger to show you things, to allow space to be filled by things that are pushing you closer towards God and your calling and your creativity. You instead are using it to lead to further stagnation. And so, if you want to break gluttony, it doesn't actually start with your plate. And this is why so many people get it wrong. It starts with your picture, it starts with your vision. What do you see when you look 5 years down the road? Heck, 5 days or 5 weeks down the road. Most of us don't think about when we are actively working against our futures. And if it's small, if it's vague, if it's blurry, or if it seems impossible, then your body is going to default to those cravings because it has no incentive to live for calling. And so you will serve what you can taste instead of what you could build. You will worship the now instead of stewarding what is next. And so imagine is what gives your appetite something holy and purposeful and meaningful to wait for. And once you see it clearly, you can stop craving like a slave to your appetite. You see, the next thing is that addicted to delay is gluttony because gluttony distorts time. See, you're not just addicted to sugar, you're addicted to delay. Gluttony isn't just about taste, it's about time distortion, meaning when you binge, you get to pause or feel like you have paused on your responsibilities, on your pressures, and your purpose. Food isn't the idol, food is just a placeholder for escape. Here's what most people don't realize is that when you reach for food that you don't need, you're not feeding your body, you're escaping the moment. You're delaying a decision. You're avoiding engagement with your actual life. This is how gluttony works. It's like spiritual anesthesia. You see? Just like that. It's that simple that it knocks you out and it makes you move and be passive because you eat to pause responsibility. Hey, you're working and you want to stop and you don't want to figure out this place that you got that if you just wait and if you prayed and if you got through it, that you would be able to resolve and keep moving forward. So you eat. You eat to push off a hard conversation. I'll do that, but after lunch, but after dinner, but after I get a snack, right? You eat to postpone obedience, doing something that you know you should be doing. And you eat to delay the discomfort of being in the present with your pressure, your goals, your calling, and your next act of faith because you don't feel comfortable or confident or competent to actually do it. And so instead of using courage and getting to the place where you do feel confident, you choose to sedate yourself with food. You see, gluttony is often less about what you're consuming and more often about what you're actually postponing. Because oftentimes we use gluttony to be a pause button. And let's say it even clearer that bite, that bag, that binge, it's not about the taste. It's about giving you a timeout. It gives you 15 minutes where you feel like the pressure fades, the next step disappears, and just for a moment, that you don't have to be the person that God is calling you to be. You see, again, it doesn't often look like just this fighting and this rebelliousness. Sometimes it looks like rescheduling obedience. That's why some people who seem so on fire for God can still be stuck. This is why so many of our pulpits are filled with pastors who should be the leaders in this that are still clearly struggling with bondage to food that we can tell by their vessel. And even me talking to you, this is something that the Lord has been showing me. And although I am on my own journey and the scale is moving down, that's what I'm saying. It's not even about the scale. It's a byproduct of what we do and why we do things. And the Lord showing me this so I could show it to you to uncover the true reasons why we are grabbing food. And until we understand that, we will not get the fact that it's not about the diet or the weight loss plan or the workout plan at all. It's about understanding who we are. And until you have that aligned with who you are and who you will be, then you will never be able to shift anything regarding anything else in your life because you're just hacking away at the fruit instead of actually changing the root. And so this is why, again, people who seem on fire for God can still be stuck because they're not in open rebellion. They're just constantly postponing alignment through micro actions of comfort. Just one snack before I write content, just to give me a little more energy. Just one treat before I submit the application, maybe after I have to celebrate, right? Just one scroll before I show up for that goal. I just need a break. I just need to relax for a little bit. Just one yes to the flesh before I crucify it tomorrow. Tomorrow, later, soon, Monday. But the delay is disobedience dressed in procrastination. And gluttony is often the same costume that makes delay look harmless. Because you're not stuck because you don't know what to do. You're stuck because every time the moment to obey arrives, you sedate it with another meal, another snack, another drink, just another thing in order to push it back to tomorrow. You know it's not the issue is information. You bought the meal plans. You know calories in and calories out. You know eat less, move more. If it was that simple, everybody would not only lose weight, but would keep the weight off. But that's not what happens. You see, the enemy doesn't need to trap you if he can just trap you in snacks that slow your obedience. He doesn't need you to fall as much as he needs you to pause enough times that your calling passes you by. And here's the scary part, that delay becomes identity. You start to see yourself as someone who always struggles. Put in the comments below if this is something that you have felt that you may be struggling with right now, that you don't even trust yourself anymore, that you see yourself as a person who maybe can't be consistent, who can't be disciplined, and that you are just someone who never finishes the moment, that you give it away to cravings, to sugar, to emotional self soothing, not because you feel out of control, but because you're out of vision long enough to feel like this moment doesn't matter. We can be vulnerable here. Have you felt like that? I know I certainly have. Where I feel like this thing that I'm doing in the moment, this one meal, this extra thing is not going to make or break me. But that's what it is. All of those little things end up becoming the bucket that then pours out over your life. And it's either going to be pouring into what you want or pouring into the life that you don't want. Because gluttony doesn't block destiny all at once. It just delays you long enough to feel like obedience is optional. And here's the real addiction, it's not the food, it's the pause button. It's the momentary suspension of pressure. It's the comfort of not yet. It's the lie that you can obey after you feel better, after you eat, after you numb. But the truth is that clarity doesn't come after you eat. Obedience doesn't get easier after you feel full, and purpose doesn't wait while you delay. You can't binge your way into breakthrough. You can't chew your way into clarity, and you can't scroll and snack your way into sanctification. God moves in time and you are late. Now, another thing that exposes the roots that a lot of people don't want to get to the root of, and we have to if we're going to break every single one of these, is generational bondage, the appetite that runs in the family when it seems nobody runs in your family. And I know because I come from one of those families where your grandma called it comfort food, but it passed down a pattern that you still ended up carrying. To break financial lack, you have to break appetite addiction. You have to talk about inheritance because we inherit not just genes, but coping mechanisms and emotional defaults. And it's what we reach for when life gets hard if no one actually taught you how to deal with it. And a lot of times you are taught to deal with it with food. Something good happens, let's go get ice cream. Something sad happens. That can also be solved with ice cream. And we are taught when it's good and it's a birthday, let's go celebrate. It's a cake, it's a wedding, let's go get cake. Like we're taught all of these things to associate every emotion, whether good or bad in our life, with food. And so that's what we reach for when life gets hard. And for many women, what you call a craving, your grandmother would have called survival, and her mother before her, it would have been silence. And so what your ancestors didn't have permission to confront then, or the tools to be able to confront then, you are now called to break because you did not see this video by accident. The meal that you run when you're sad or you're tired or overwhelmed, it might taste like mac and cheese or hot biscuits or cinnamon rolls, but it feels like home. And that's where it gets us because it tastes like you're being cared for. It smells like safety. And that is why it's dangerous because you're not feeding your hunger, you're feeding your history. And here's the twist, for generations, food has become how women created warmth in homes where emotional expression wasn't allowed, where trauma wasn't named, where stress wasn't released, where numbing became the only tool passed down that didn't require permission. So, what started as comfort became cultural. What started as survival became a pattern. And now you are stuck calling it normal. And you're not just breaking a diet pattern, you're breaking a generational pattern with emotional avoidance. And here's why it matters, because while they might not have known better, you do. And you're no longer a little girl watching women feed pain with pastries. You're a kingdom woman with a calling, and you're carrying not just your breakthrough, but your bloodline's upgrade. What you starve, the next generation will never have to fight. And what you confront, your children don't have to inherit. And you're either building a staircase for them to step up on, or you are digging a hole for them to have to get out of. Which one do you want to be? Because the truth that nobody says out loud is you can't tithe your way out of financial lack, especially if you are binging in secret. You can't pray for overflow and then live on pantry anesthesia that prevents you from actually doing anything that would allow you to receive overflow. And you can't build wealth on the same foundation that produced survival eating. You can't serve God with your mouth if your stomach is still mastered by your mother's coping mechanisms. And you think that you're just breaking a habit, but you're breaking a bloodline. So if you've ever said, I don't know why I do this, or this is just how I was raised, or it's the only way I know how to feel better, you're closer to your breakthrough than you think, because awareness is the first crack. So now you get to decide, will I keep feeding what bound the women before me, or will I become the one who starves this cycle for good? Because at some point, someone in the family has to say, it ends with me. And if you believe that this will end with you, put it in the comments. It ends with me. And we can celebrate that declaration here with you. And the next thing is something that is so powerful, and that's that our eating is prophetic in a large way, in a way that what you do with your plate is going to be a very clear picture of what will come about in your life in terms of your future. Every meal is an altar, and you're either sacrificing comfort or you're sacrificing your calling. And you're either fasting for fire or you're feeding your flesh. There's not a single neutral bite. That's why the Bible literally says everything you do, whatever you eat, whatever you drink, do it as unto the glory of the Lord. Is what you eat and what you drink, would that be a reflection of something that glorifies God? Could you be looked at and somebody say, "Hey, I can tell that you steward what God has given you well based on the way that you steward yourself"? Because how are you asking people to trust you with their products and their callings and their transformations when you can't even trust yourself with what you put in your own mouth? And so it's not about eating clean. It's not about dieting. It's about what are you bowing down to at the table? Because every act of eating is a declaration of allegiance. You're either affirming the dominion that God has given you over your assignment and your task and your calling, or you're indulging in dysfunction. And there's not an in between. In the kingdom, food isn't casual, it's covenantal. Do you realize how many things in scripture are centered around food? From Eden and Eve's sin to the Last Supper, meals have always marked moments of radical obedience or radical rebellion, the power of passivity, the remembrance of rejection. Adam and Eve didn't get kicked out of the garden because of murder. They lost everything over a single bite because that bite wasn't about hunger, it was about authority. The first sin wasn't disobedience with words, it was disobedience with food. That's why food remains one of the most subtle, seductive battlegrounds for modern believers. It feels innocent, it feels small, and oftentimes we can make it feel justified. But in the spirit realm, it's a signal. You're saying this woman can delay pleasure. This woman is mastered by nothing. This woman can be trusted with more when you're actually voting that plate to your calling. Or it says, this one gives in quickly. This one can't hold the weight. This one will always choose flesh over fire. You see, fasting isn't about starvation, it's about spiritual selection. And every time you fast, you are saying, choose me for the heavy thing. With your grace, I will be able to carry it. You are showing yourself a vessel fit to hold more. And this is what scripture says, that the Lord will give more to those who do well with little. So this isn't about legalism. This is the way that the Lord has the kingdom of God set up, that if you do well with little, that he will give you more. And so some women pray for fire, but we live on sugar. And we ask God for clarity, but we keep feeding confusion. And we want overflow, but we keep indulging in what drains discernment and delays obedience. You can't build a temple, but you're bowing at the altar of your cravings. Because every meal is a moment to either fuel your fire or feed your flesh. And what you tolerate at the table is going to echo into your purpose. Food isn't just energy, it's a tool of remembrance or rebellion. Are you eating like someone on assignment? If somebody saw your plates, if somebody saw your pantry and your refrigerator. If somebody tracked your Uber Eats or your DoorDash or was able to just look at your physical form, would they be able to tell that you're fueling the call or would they think that there's someone who's numbing the pressure? Are you honoring your body like a vessel or are you treating it like a vending machine? You're not just breaking a fast, you're breaking a pattern. You're not just skipping a snack, you're silencing the voice of the flesh that was robbing you blind. Because you don't just fast for fire, you also feed for fire too. Every bite is either kindling or it's a wet blanket that is putting everything out. So now the question isn't, what am I eating? It's, what is this bite prophesying? What is it saying about my choices, about my beliefs, about my future? Am I eating like someone who is preparing for battle, preparing to walk in their calling? Or am I eating like someone who is begging for relief? Because every meal is an altar and you are the offering. And if that landed like a sword, then good, because your cravings have been calling the shots for too long. And trust me, this is something that the Lord is still teaching me every day. And it's not about needing another diet, you need discernment. This is exactly why I built the Devil's Diet Decoder, which is a free guide and it's not a checklist, it's a confrontation that maps out and exposes the 7 quiet agreements where gluttony hides behind even your best intentions. So you can stop feeding what's been robbing you because you cannot win if you don't even know the enemy's game plan. And so you can see how things that seem like even self care or that you deserve could have been leaking in your discipline and draining your fire and keeping you in cycles of delay because it's not about what's on your plate, it's about what's on your life. And so you can download that in the description for free and start breaking those daily agreements that are feeding the enemy more than they are feeding your assignment. And the decoder is your first weapon. Now, the next thing that we need to expose is how much eating and food and gluttony specifically is powerlessness in disguise. And that poverty and obesity are just two forms of agreement with powerless. Both say, I just can't help it. Both are learned helplessness in different costumes, scarcity and overindulgence. God is not withholding wealth. Your appetite is withholding endurance. And gluttony leaks your strength. And without strength, you can't scale. How many times have you said that you can't work on the business today because you're too tired from work? How many times have you been supposed to do something? Maybe you had an opportunity, you're supposed to go somewhere, do something, and you declined it because you didn't want to be walking around all day, because you don't have the capacity or the energy to actually fulfill those things. You see, tend to see poverty and obesity as two unrelated issues. That one, poverty is about lack, and obesity is about excess, right? But spiritually, they have the same origin. Both are rooted in a silent agreement with these facts. I have no control. That's what you're saying at the root of both things. This is just how life is. I can't afford better. I can't stop eating. Or maybe you lie to yourself and say you could stop if you wanted to. You know who says that? Drug addict. Just saying. I'm just saying. Okay. And you say it's always been like this in my family. Or I've tried everything. Or I don't have time. I don't have energy. I don't have discipline. That sound familiar? These aren't just excuses, they're evidence of resignation, a life handed over to default settings. Do you want a default life? Do you want an average life? Because that's what doing average things gets you. You don't just wake up poor and overweight, at least staying there. You wake up worn down by thousands of small and quiet agreements with powerlessness. And the tragedy is that powerlessness is rarely loud. It's subtle, it's reasonable, and it's culturally accepted. Scarcity says, I'll never have enough. And gluttony says, I'll never be enough. Both steal your spiritual stamina, your margin, your ability to hold weight, to show up, to endure, and to finish. You see, God is not withholding the promise, it is your patterns that are leaking the power. How does this play out in real life? Let's see. You get a vision. How many times have you had a great idea? You know something that God is calling you to do, but you're too tired to actually execute it. You start something, but then you binge and halfway through and you lose your clarity and you don't end up picking that thing up again. You feel God moving, but you can't move because your body is out of sync. You get an opportunity, but you don't have the capacity to carry it. Do you know how many women I've talked to who have been afraid to get on camera because of their weight? Do you know how many women I have talked to who have not wanted to get on stages, who not wanted to meet people or take pictures or even go outside of their house to fellowship with the saints because of them knowing that they are not actually representing Christ well in their bodies? Like, this is something that is doing so much damage to all the people that could be helped if you were walking in where you were supposed to be. And do you know how much harder it makes people to actually believe you when they don't see the fruit in your life of being a person who is stewarding and disciplined and walking in the calling? Even in my own business, at my current weight, I have had people who have told me, hey, like, I trust you and I get it. And I know that you've had all the success. But like, if this is the case, like, if you have so much money, why don't you have a diet? Like, why don't you? And it's because I was stuck too. I was stuck not understanding that it wasn't about the diet, that it wasn't about getting a personal trainer or anything like that. It was about understanding that I had these same blocks that I am telling you, where I was running to food for relief, where I was running to food for comfort, for self soothing, where I went through 8 miscarriages for 3 years. And for 3 years straight, I was either miscarrying or pregnant the entire time. And there were so many medications and fertility stuff that I was taking. And I could use all of that as an excuse and I could justify myself in doing so. But the truth is that there was so much of that where I was using food for comfort. I was using food to self soothe. I felt so out of control that entire time because, like, of course you're supposed to be able to have a baby, right? Like, you get married and we're Christians and we love the Lord, and like there are plenty of people who aren't Christians and who don't love the Lord who have kids, and I thought that was supposed to be the thing that happened. And it's not the point. The point is that, like, when we have whatever it is that goes on in our life, it's so easy to choose food because it gives us control. It gives us the feeling of power when we feel like everything else in our life is out of control. And what we have to do though is to release it, to acknowledge what's going on, and to turn to the Lord and to the graces and to the means that He has given us. Turn to prayer, turn to movement, turn to friends, turn to our plans and our goals. And imagine if every moment that you spent procrastinating through eating or ordering food or thinking about what you're going to eat, how many times do you wake up in the morning and the first thing you think about is what you're going to have for lunch? Like, what if you use that brain power to do something else? How different could the world be if it had you in it, fully shown up, fully aware, fully capable, and not sedated, with full energy and no fatigue? The excuses are there, but you get to choose whether or not you're going to be seen as someone who is capable or someone who is constantly complaining. And then you do this stuff and we fail and we get the opportunity, but we don't have the capacity to carry it. And so you tell yourself, well, maybe God's testing me. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe I just need to pray more. But the truth is that you've outsourced responsibility to spiritual language to avoid the pain of confronting what your appetite has been sabotaging. Because gluttony doesn't just steal your energy, it steals your self trust. And self trust builds spiritual momentum. And it's not trusting ourselves more than we trust God, but when we are told to do something and we continue not to do it, that's not God failing, that's us. And when we do this so constantly, it can be hard to believe yourself when you say you're going to do it again. And so if you can't say no to what numbs you, then you will never carry the weight of what fuels you. This is why so many women get stuck at 5K months, even 10K months, get stuck on their fifth failed start date that they were supposed to do that they keep pushing back, get stuck in a cycle of trying to obey God with a body that is too exhausted to actually rise, because gluttony leaks strength, and strength is the currency of stewardship. So God isn't looking for perfection. He's looking for vessels with the strength to scale. And so when you allow gluttony to remain unchecked, you're not just compromising your body, you are compromising your calling's capacity. You leak time, you leak energy, you leak conviction, you leak credibility, you leak glory, the glory of God, because you can't carry kingdom weight on a foundation that caves under cupcakes and chaos. And so here's the question: where in your life have you been dressing up powerlessness as personality? I'm just a stress eater. I'm not a disciplined person. I've just always been big. I'm big boned. I ain't got no big bones. You better go to DEXA scan. Your bones are normal size and they hurting, okay? Or I'm just not wired for structure. Those are not identities. Those are agreements. And they are keeping you small and stuck and slow. And the enemy doesn't care if you're full or empty as long as you are ineffective, because powerlessness comes in both forms. You're not helpless because you have the ultimate helper in the Lord. And you were broken, but by the grace of God, you have been made whole. And you are not a slave. You are free in Christ. You are not bound to your cravings. You are just overdue for a new agreement. One that says, I do have authority. God gave it to me. I do have endurance. The Lord provides it, and I will not hand my destiny over to dysfunction. And so now we've exposed what is at the root of this. We have to understand the doctrine behind it and the spiritual laws that have either been working against you, but when you understand them, you can use these very same laws to work for you and to actually quick start and rapid fire your road to walking in your calling. Because this isn't personal, it's about spiritual law. God is not specifically against you because you did this thing. This is simply the way that He made the world to work. And so we can either complain about it or we can know that it was for our good. We can literally use the playbook the Lord gave us to win and see ourselves succeeding all the time, which is what I so want for you. So the first law is one that you've heard before, but that you might not have understood in this context. It's the law of sowing and reaping and understanding that your appetite is a seed. So if you sow gluttony, you're going to reap fatigue. And if you sow fatigue, then you're going to reap delay. And if you sow delay, then you're going to reap poverty. How many times have you seen this harvest cycle in your own life where you eat yourself into sedation and now you're tired? You're tired, you're worn out, you're fatigued. And because you are fatigued, you push back the project, you push back the vision, you push back the book you were supposed to write, you push back the coaching you were supposed to start, you push back the business, you push back the job application, all because you are tired. And then you delay and you continue to delay. And because of that, you have now reaped something for you then, which is poverty. Because when you don't do the thing gets done. If you don't do it, nobody else is going to come do it. And so your appetite is a seed. And every time you say yes to the flesh, you are saying no to the future. There are no neutral decisions. There's not a fence. There's no fences around here. And see, poverty isn't a punishment, it is the harvest of poor stewardship. And so we know the law. The law is that you reap what you sow. But what we forget is that it's not just about money and time, it's about what you feed spiritually, emotionally, and physically. That every decision, every snack, every snooze is discipline, is a seed. And seeds don't lie. They don't care about your excuses. They multiply whatever you give them. And I think we don't realize that when we hear sowing and reaping, we like to think good, right? Like I put some money in, I'm gonna give me some money back, or I invest in this and I'm gonna get a return. Your bad things are seeds too. Weeds also grow in the garden, y'all. And so when you eat, you're not just eating a snack, you're sowing into your stamina and whether or not you're gonna have it. When you skip a workout, you're sowing delay because you won't be fit to actually be fit enough to carry what you're supposed to. You're not just indulging in a craving, that's your seed of investing in the consequences of that craving, right? And so here is the trap. We sow in comfort and then we're shocked at what grows. You say, why am I always tired? Why can't I get clarity? Why does obedience feel so hard for me? Why am I still broke? Why am I still behind? Why am I still so overwhelmed? Because you planted fatigue, you fed delay, and you watered powerlessness. And now you are harvesting what you never realized that you were growing. Fatigue isn't random. Delay is not random. They are a crop of the seed of gluttony that is sown quietly and consistently. What would it be if you could take an inventory of all of the fruit that gluttony has gotten you in your life? That would be so powerful. And I encourage you to write that down in your notes and to do that exercise and to take an inventory of everything that gluttony has cost you. That's one of the major exercises that we do. And I give so many examples and prompts inside of the $1,000,000 vessel, which, if you're interested, I can talk to you about that at the end. But these are the types of things and questions that will shift everything for you if you can get to the root of them and be honest about it. Because this is where gluttony becomes a spiritual investment strategy, not in your calling, but you're investing in your collapse. Because every time you say just one more bite, every time you say I'll start tomorrow, every time you say, but I deserve this, you're not just feeding your body, you are feeding a future where obedience gets pushed back again, where purpose has to wait, where wealth is what's held, not because God is stingy, but because your vessel is unfit to hold it. And so God won't pour legacy into a leaky seedbed. You're asking him to fund your overflow while you're planting daily compromise. And let's be real, some of us have been faithfully tithing with our mouths while tithing destruction with our habits. You're praying for rain, but you're sowing weeds. You're declaring financial freedom, but sowing sluggishness, fog, and flesh. And you're asking for harvest, but sowing a lifestyle that chokes at the root. And here's the kicker. Even if no one sees you sowing it, your life will announce the harvest. This, this here shaking, that announces the harvest. This is what I have harvested because of the decisions that I have made over the last 3 years. And the kicker is that consistency will either preach obedience or expose avoidance. This is your witness. This is your reputation. It can be seen very evidently if you are actually stewarding the thing that God has given you in your body. It is either a testimony for you or it is a witness against you because the harvest doesn't lie. If your life is reaping delay, look at where you have been sowing those seeds of comfort, of indulgence, and of following your craving because I guarantee you it is a very clear line to trace back. So, what does this mean for you? It means that food is not neutral, that your choices are not neutral, your rhythms are not neutral. Your appetite is a prophetic act of sowing. You are either planting for clarity or you're planting for confusion, for fire or for fatigue, for dominion or for delay, for purpose or for poverty. And the ground never lies. So ask yourself, what am I sowing today with my appetite? Is this from comfort or compromise? Is the fuel for my assignment, is this fuel for it or fertilizer for my excuses? Because if you don't like the harvest, you got to confront the seed. Now, the next law is the law of stewardship, that your mouth is the first budget you ever managed. And if you can't manage your mouth, then you will not successfully manage and keep millions, period. And this can be a little paradoxical as well, because you may say, but there are some people who, you may be even like, well, I make great money and, I don't manage my mouth well. And I'd be very curious to as you keep it. And I'd also be curious to how long you will keep it for. And sometimes we have specific blocks in one area, but not the other. But in general, the same spirit that says just one more bite is the same one that's going to say just one more splurge. If gluttony leads to rags, then you can't ask God to clothe you in royalty and and be and compromise his own word. He's not going to do it. God is going to be faithful to do what he said he would do. His word will never return void. God is not a man that he should lie. Okay. So if he said this is the way that I have the system set up, he's not making any exceptions on your account. And so let's get it straight. Money doesn't build stewardship. Discipline does. And so the first thing you were ever called to steward, it wasn't your business, it wasn't your bank account or even your calendar. It was your body, your appetite, your mouth. Before God hands you land or influence or wealth, what are you doing with your cravings and your comfort and your consumption? If you can't say no to fries, then you won't say no to the false opportunities that come dressed up as favor when they're really not. And this is where it gets raw because everyone wants to talk about scaling. Everybody wants to talk about overflow. Everybody wants to talk about expansion. But God is a God of order. And in his kingdom, promotion follows stewardship. And in this, it's not about passion. You can be the most passionate person in the world. You can be the most gifted person in the world. And you can be the most ambitious person in the world. But if you're asking for more while mismanaging what you have got, then you are not being delayed. You are being protected. Because the thing is that the same voice that says, just one more bite, I'll get back on track tomorrow. I need this right now, is the exact same voice that will say, just buy this one thing, or I'll deal with the overdraft later, or it's not that big of a deal. It's just money. And how you treat your appetite is training for how you're going to handle that increase. Your stomach is a stimulator, a simulator for scale. And that's why gluttony isn't just about food, it is a mirror and it reveals your default settings in every area. Do you delay discomfort or do you lean into it? Do you manage resources with restraint or are you reactive? Do you lead yourself or soothe yourself? Because the woman who cannot govern her cravings will eventually lose credibility with her calling. And so you're not just eating out of alignment, you're proving that you are ready for next level responsibility. Your life is your performance evaluation. It's going to determine if you get to the next level. And the truth most people avoid is that you can't expect kingdom finances while living in flesh driven patterns. And you can't pray for stewardship blessings while practicing emotional spending with your plate. If you don't learn how to master what goes in your mouth, you will never manage what flows through your hands because it's all coming from the same root. And here's the scary part. God won't bless you past your level of stewardship. not because he's harsh, but because he loves you too much to watch you drown in abundance that you don't have the float to carry. You see, gluttony trains your brain to indulge now and regret it later. And that same programming will show up when you get paid, when you get promoted, or when you get put on a platform. And so the mouth is a test. And if you can't steward your food in private, then it's very likely that you will not steward anything well in public. And so if you're asking, why hasn't the breakthrough come? Why isn't the business scaling? Why does money still leak through my fingers? Check your appetite, because stewardship isn't about spreadsheets, it's about self governance under pressure. And the first territory that you're called to govern is yourself, is your body, your cravings, your capacity, and your consumption. And so if you want to manage millions, start with managing what goes in your mouth. And if you can't steward what fuels you, you can't be trusted to steward what will fund you. And if gluttony leads to rags, then you can't keep asking God to dress you in royalty and go against his own law and word. Now, the next doctrine principle is the principle of correspondence. And this is that the internal order determines the external overflow. You see, gluttony isn't about food, it's about broken internal systems. And broken systems don't produce wealth, they destroy it. So you can't build an external prosperity if you are full of internal disorder, because God won't give you what you don't have the discipline to sustain, because he loves us the same way you would not give your child something that you knew was going to ruin it. And it does happen in special circumstances, but I genuinely believe that in those cases, the Lord is teaching people something through that thing, and it is for his special purpose. But on the average case and 99 on the rule, we don't see that, because God is too good to allow a 5-year-old to get the keys of the truck and go out and start driving in the street knowing that it would literally be the death of them. And so this is a universal kingdom law, is that as within is so without, that what is misaligned inside will eventually manifest outside. And this is why people can get a financial breakthrough and still live broke, why they can lose 30 pounds and then gain it back in 90 days, why they can scale a business and then burn it to the ground emotionally. Because breakthrough was never the problem. Their internal structure could not sustain it. God's not holding back your harvest. Your internal disorder is choking out the root system. Gluttony is one of the most overlooked signs of internal chaos. It tells the truth that your mouth may never speak, that I don't know how to be still without soothing myself. I don't know how to feel discomfort without trying to escape it through food. I don't know how to sustain pressure without looking for something to pacify myself. It's not a food problem, it's a system malfunction. And God, in his mercy, is not going to fund your dysfunction. Because what good is $1 million if you need sugar to think straight and caffeine to function? What good is a platform if you can't fast or focus or finish? What good is favor if you crumble every time pressure hits your nervous system? Because God doesn't bless your desires, he blesses what is ready. And readiness is about internal infrastructure. Gluttony reveals an infrastructure issue. It exposes when a nervous system is out of sync, a body that's overwhelmed, a mind that is desperate for dopamine, a will that has been hijacked by impulse, and a spiritual core that is running on fumes. You cannot build kingdom wealth on that foundation, not because it's about being unworthy, but because heaven doesn't finance chaos. And the level of breakthrough that you're praying for requires a level of stability that you have not built yet. This is why the principle of correspondence matters so much, because you can't manifest order in your finances while maintaining chaos in your appetite. You can't step into overflow with lifestyle built on impulse and indulgence. And you might touch it for a moment, but without internal governance, you will sabotage what you have been given. Gluttony is the symptom. Disorder is the system. Delay is the consequence. So the real question isn't, why hasn't God blessed me yet? It's, can the current version of you sustain what you're asking for? Answer that question for yourself. Would you be able to sustain it if you were truly honest? And oftentimes the answer is no. Then gluttony isn't your enemy, but it's a warning sign. It's a dashboard light on your car that's blinking. Rebuild the structure before you scale the vision. Rebuild the structure. And that's why when I'm talking to some people and they're telling you that they're having struggles with their business, I'm like, maybe pause. Maybe let's look at what the internal infrastructure is. Maybe it's not that you used the wrong business strategy. Maybe it's not that even you did the wrong meal plan. Maybe it's actually that the reason why you can't get here in this area is because we haven't dealt with the root in this area. And so now you're trying to build something when you haven't even established a foundation. And let me ask, how much time have you wasted doing that instead of actually addressing the root. And so it's not about food, it's about functional faith. It's about asking God for a kingdom calling and then becoming a vessel that won't collapse under it. And you don't fix your life by chasing outcomes. You fix your life by healing the systems that create them. And gluttony isn't random. It's the echo of internal misalignment calling for reformation. Now, the next doctrine is the law of capacity. This is that God is not withholding provision. You are leaking it. You see, the problem is not God's provision, it's your capacity. Gluttony shrinks your bandwidth. And if you can't carry weight, then God is too gracious to send it. We love to talk about overflow, about favor, about breakthrough, about promotion and elevation, but none of those are gifts as much as weights. And God, in His mercy, does not send weight to a vessel that will collapse under it. You see, gluttony isn't just about food, it's about volume, how much responsibility, how much pressure and purpose you can hold without defaulting to self soothing. What most people miss is that gluttony doesn't just add weight to your body. It steals capacity from your mind, your stamina, your spiritual alertness, your emotional rage, your execution edge. You become the person who has vision but no energy, who starts a fast but then fizzles out, who has divine ideas but no grit to carry them through, and who is called but constantly overwhelmed by the bare minimum. And so God isn't waiting for you to be more anointed or to have more passion or even be more gifted, but for you to build capacity in being a kind of vessel that can hold what you're asking for. Because the mantle you're asking for is heavy, the wealth you're praying for is weighty, and the responsibility that you're called to walk in is costly. And gluttony quietly disqualifies you, not morally, but structurally. Not because you're bad, but because your habits signal that you don't have the internal infrastructure to carry this without collapsing. And so you're asking for influence, but you can't carry hunger without caving. And you asking for impact, but you can't complete a fast. And you're asking for millions, but you can't make it past lunchtime without breaking your commitment. That's not condemnation, it's calibration. God isn't punishing you by delaying provision, He's preserving you. And until you have bandwidth to bear the blessing without it breaking you, because what good is overflow if you drown in it? The real question is, can you hold under pressure what you've been asking God to pour out? If the answer is no, then gluttony is one of those places to look because it trains your body to tap out early, to default to ease, to reach for relief instead of resolve, and to be mastered by cravings instead of a mission. You see, God won't give kingdom weight to a vessel that is still built for comfort. And gluttony is a capacity leak in disguise. It makes you full, but not fulfilled, busy, but not built, loud, but not lasting, hungry, but never harnessed. And it makes your calling feel heavier, not because the calling changed, but because you lost the strength to carry it with clarity and conviction. So the breakthrough isn't God send more. It's God stretch me, increase my capacity to carry without caving. Make me a vessel that can hold the weight of what you have already said yes to, because the issue was never His provision, it was your preparation. So listen, you don't need another food journal. You don't need another reset Monday. You don't need another meal plan. You need a place where fire meets form, where your cravings stop being cute and start being conquered, where you're no longer trying to do better, you're becoming someone different. And that is what the $1 million vessel program is. And it's not a diet, it's a dismantling of every excuse, every bloodline lie, every craving that's been calling the shots behind your calling. And if your spirit is screaming, it ends with me, but your body still doesn't know how to live that truth yet, then the $1 million vessel is your next right step. We don't count calories, we count the cost. And we raise women who can carry kingdom weight without crumbling under it. You can join right now because if you have gotten this point in this video, you know that you were not made to nibble your way through life. You were made to carry fire. And now you can see it. You can see that every bite was a delay, that every craving was a covenant, that every excuse was a step towards exile. And if that hit you, understand that this isn't about condemnation, it's about waking up. And next, this is how you move forward. It's by joining the Million Dollar Vessel, which you can learn more about in the description. And we are going to get started. And I am taking this journey with you. I've been on this journey now, and the Lord has already brought me so far. I have seen so many things show up in my life that I would have never gotten access to. I have crossed from millionaire to multi-millionaire by literally opening up my capacity because I stopped soothing with food, because I started walking into the fullness of who God called me to be on another level, and God opened up another level. And I'm experiencing things I never have in my life, doing things that I never thought I was capable of, all because I was using food as a distraction and as a sedation method. And I don't want you to have another moment of your life, another opportunity, another door, another window closed because you are so sedated and fatigued by not having a vessel that can carry what you have been praying for. And so if you are ready to break through to that next level, then check it out right now, because the $1 million vessel is unlike anything you have ever experienced before. And it does not focus on what to do, it focuses on bringing back who you are. And so, if you are already joined and you're ready to get to the next video, well, that's what we're going to be talking about in the third part of this series, about not the cravings, but the consequences. And this is where it gets real. What happens when the vessel meant to carry glory is too full of compromise to receive it? I'm going to show you why your blessing hasn't landed. And it's not because it's been denied, it's because your belly is in the way. Part three is not content. This is the confrontation. And trust me, you're going to feel it in your bones. So if you don't want to miss it, make sure you hit the notification bell and subscribe, like the video, comment. It ends with me if it ends with you and you are ready to be the breakthrough and the chain breaker in your family that it won't be carried for anymore. And once it saw you, it saw the end. So I'll see you in that next video. See you there. Stay tuned.